Picture this. Paris, late 17th century. The morning air is a strange perfume, lavender from a merchant stall, orange blossom wafting from a passing noblewoman, and underneath it all, a faint sourness no amount of fragrance can quite hide. Carriage wheels creak over cobblestones slick from last night's rain. And above this swirl of noise and color, a sea of powdered mountains, hair so stiff and sculpted it barely moves, curls frozen like marble, casting shadows across perfectly painted faces. These weren't just eccentric fashion statements. They were armor. They were masks. They were secrets. And, believe it or not, beneath those wigs was a history tangled with disease, deception, royal vanity, and the desperate fight to keep up appearances in a world where image wasn't just important, it was survival. To understand how this strange fashion became one of the most dominant symbols of power in Western history, we need to travel back, not to Versailles just yet, but to the late 1400s, when something dark began creeping through Europe. The culprit was syphilis. At first, it seemed like an irritant more than a death sentence, a sore here, a rash there. But in an era without antibiotics, without germ theory, and with medicine rooted as much in superstition as in science, the disease evolved into something terrifying. Flesh rotted in patches. Limbs twisted with pain. Noses and lips collapsed into the face. And hair, that universal sign of health, beauty, and social worth, fell out in ragged, humiliating clumps. In a society where appearance was currency, baldness wasn't seen as bad luck. It was an unspoken confession. A signal of sin, moral weakness, or dangerous contagion. A bare head could destroy reputations. It could end marriages before they began, spark rumors that spread faster than fire, and cripple political ambitions overnight. One London courtier is said to have locked himself indoors for months after whispers about his vanishing hair began to circulate. And yet, no one talked openly about it. In a time when any hint of sexual disease carried lifelong stigma, admitting to symptoms was unthinkable. Physicians could do little more than prescribe mercury or herbal concoctions that often made patients sicker. So the solution came not from medicine, but from craft, from the hands of artisans who could disguise the damage. Wig makers, weavers, and hairdressers became unlikely healers. At first, the fixes were modest, artfully arranged curls to cover a bald patch, padded braids to disguise thinning crowns. But necessity and ambition soon fused. And ambition, especially in a royal court, always demands spectacle. The turning point came in the 1660s, when a king made the wig fashionable. Not just any king, Louis XIV of France, the Sun King himself. Louis understood the politics of appearance better than anyone. Versailles wasn't just a palace, it was a stage set for the performance of absolute monarchy. Every hallway of mirrors, every gilded gate was meant to awe visitors into submission. In portraits, Louis glowed like a demigod, ageless, invincible. But by his late teens, he faced a problem: his own hair was thinning. In the 17th century, hair wasn't a trivial accessory. For men and women alike, it was proof of youth, vitality, nobility, even divine favor. To lose it was to lose face, quite literally. Louis refused to let that happen. He summoned the finest wig makers in Europe, and at one point had as many as 48 working exclusively for him. They crafted monumental cascades of curls that extended his silhouette, making him appear taller, broader, more imposing, almost supernatural. Naturally, the court followed. To appear bareheaded in the king's presence was unthinkable. The peruke, as these wigs were called, became essential at court events, political gatherings, hunts, even casual strolls in the gardens. And while the public line was fashion, the private truth was more practical. A good wig could hide the pockmarks of smallpox, the sores of syphilis, or the uneven scalp left behind by illness. There was another advantage: hygiene. In an age before daily bathing, head lice were everywhere. Shaving one's natural hair and wearing a wig meant you could simply boil the wig to kill the pests. Wig makers offered cleaning, delousing, and repowdering services, often perfuming the wigs with lavender, rose, or citrus to mask less pleasant odors. Powdering itself became an art. While we picture wigs as pure white, the wealthy experimented with silvery blues, pale pinks, lavender, even light green. These colors could match seasonal fashions or make a dramatic statement at a ball. The powder added volume, stiffened curls, and helped maintain the shape. Ingredients included rice flour, starch, talcum, chalk, and for the bold, plaster of Paris. Not exactly gentle on the scalp, but effective. At first, wigs were an aristocratic privilege. But by the early 18th century, wealthy merchants, lawyers, and skilled tradesmen began adopting them. For the nobility, this was a crisis. If anyone could look like a gentleman, how could the real gentleman stand apart? The answer was escalation. If a merchant's wig was shoulder-length, a duke's might brush the roof of his carriage. Some women turned their hair into living sculptures. One famously attended a ball with a miniature sailing ship atop her coiffure, sails unfurled. Another incorporated a working birdcage into her style, complete with live finches. The inconvenience became part of the point. If your wig was so tall you had to stoop to pass through a doorway, so be it. It proved you lived above such mundane concerns. The more impractical, the more enviable. By the 1770s, wig making was a thriving, regulated industry. France alone boasted nearly 1,000 professional wig makers, each protected by powerful guilds. Apprenticeships lasted years, and the most extravagant wigs could cost several months' wages for a skilled laborer. The term big wig wasn't metaphorical, it was literal. A massive, lavishly decorated wig was a public declaration of influence. But beneath the powdered curls, nothing had changed. People were still hiding the same vulnerabilities as their ancestors: disease, shame, the erosion of youth. In paintings, they appeared flawless. In reality, the hair underneath was often patchy, scarred, or gone entirely. And it wasn't just France. In England, King Charles II, cousin to Louis XIV, also popularized the periwig, particularly after his own hair began to thin. His court embraced the style with gusto, setting off a wig-making boom in London. The legal profession adopted wigs as part of its uniform, a tradition still alive in British courts today. There were also practical spin-offs. Military officers favored wigs that fit snugly under helmets, while clergy often wore more modest versions in keeping with their vows of humility, though still powdered, of course. Even in colonial America, powdered wigs became a marker of status, with figures like George Washington and Thomas Jefferson donning them for formal occasions. The French Revolution in 1789 brought the golden age of the wig crashing down. Anything associated with aristocratic excess became dangerous, and towering powdered hairpieces were no exception. Many wig makers turned to creating simpler styles or shifted into other trades. But the cultural mark remained. The idiom big wig persisted, the powdered curls immortalized in portraits, sculptures, and costume dramas. Even today, the image of a stately figure framed by a halo of perfect white curls instantly signals authority, elegance, and perhaps a touch of vanity. It's easy to forget that behind that display lay a very human story: fear of illness, fear of judgment, and the universal desire to control how the world sees us. So the next time you see a portrait from that era, remember, those wigs weren't just style. They were survival. They were strategy. They were scandal. Now tell me, if your reputation, your social standing, even your future depended on it, would you wear one? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more of history's strangest secrets.